She's nobody. My dad laughed, then my sister's Navy SEAL fiancé saluted me. The first words my father spoke that afternoon weren't even meant for me. They were meant for the crowd gathered beneath white wedding tents overlooking the Chesapeake Bay. He raised a glass, chuckled loud enough for every guest to hear, and pointed in my direction. "Don't mind her," he said with a grin that had embarrassed me since childhood. "She's nobody. Emily always wanted attention, but trust me, she's never accomplished a thing." Laughter rolled across the tables. Some people looked away. Others smiled awkwardly. My younger sister, Rachel, froze with her bouquet halfway to her chest. Then something happened that turned every head. Standing beside Rachel in his Navy dress uniform, her fiancé, a decorated Navy SEAL commander who hadn't smiled all afternoon, slowly placed his drink on the table. His eyes locked on mine. The music faded into background noise. Every conversation stopped. And before anyone understood why, he snapped to attention, and saluted me with absolute military precision. Nobody moved. My father blinked, confused. "What in the world are you doing?" he asked with an uneasy laugh. The commander never looked away from me. "Showing respect where it's earned, sir." His voice was calm, but it carried across the entire reception. The words landed like thunder. I wanted to disappear. My hands instinctively slipped into the pockets of the simple navy blue dress I'd bought on clearance 3 weeks earlier because I knew my father would complain if I looked too expensive. This wasn't how today was supposed to go. I had promised Rachel I wouldn't create drama, no matter how our parents treated me. She deserved one peaceful day. I swallowed the lump in my throat and quietly said, "Commander Hayes, please." He gave the slightest nod but didn't break posture immediately. Across the lawn, several active duty Marines attending the wedding exchanged puzzled glances. A retired admiral sitting near the front leaned forward with sudden recognition, studying my face as though a memory had returned after years. My father forced another laugh. "You two know each other?" he asked. "Emily? That's impossible. She works at some boring office downtown." I almost answered before catching myself. I had spent 7 years protecting a truth that wasn't mine alone to reveal. Every promotion I'd received had come with another signature promising silence. Even Rachel believed I handled paperwork for a federal contractor. It was easier that way. Easier than explaining why birthdays were missed, why my phone disappeared for weeks, or why every holiday seemed interrupted by business trips. The commander finally lowered his salute. "Sir," he replied evenly, "I believe you've been seriously mistaken about your daughter." The silence that followed felt heavier than the humid summer air. Before anyone could ask another question, Rachel hurried over and squeezed my hand beneath the table. Her fingers trembled. What's happening?" she whispered. I managed a weak smile. "Nothing you need to worry about today." But across the reception, I noticed 2 men in tailored gray suits speaking quietly into concealed microphones near their collars. They weren't wedding guests. I'd spotted them within seconds of arriving because old habits never disappeared. They were watching me, and they had been since the ceremony began. I told myself to stay calm. There were dozens of innocent explanations. Protective details appeared in unexpected places all the time. Still, the timing made my stomach tighten. Commander Hayes noticed them too. His expression hardened for only a fraction of a second before returning to normal, but I caught it. He knew exactly who they were. Or at least what they represented. My father, oblivious as always, clapped the commander on the shoulder. "Come on, son. Enough with the jokes. Let's cut the cake." But Hayes didn't move. Instead, he quietly asked, "Emily, have they contacted you yet?" My pulse skipped. I hadn't heard that question in almost 2 years. "No," I answered just as softly. "Not since Washington." His jaw tightened. "Then they will today." Before I could ask what he meant, one of the gray-suited men began walking toward us with measured confidence. The wedding guests assumed he was hotel security. I knew better the instant I saw the small eagle-shaped lapel pin hidden beneath his jacket. My breathing slowed automatically, training taking over despite every promise I'd made to leave that life behind. Rachel looked between us, completely confused. "Emily, who is that?" she asked. I opened my mouth, but the stranger reached our table first. He stopped exactly 3 feet away, removed a sealed black envelope marked with a federal security seal, and addressed me, not loudly, but with unmistakable authority. "Ma'am," he said, "I apologize for interrupting the wedding. We have urgent authorization requiring your immediate attention." Every conversation across the reception died again. My father stepped forward, irritated. "Excuse me? Whatever this is can wait. This is a family event." The man didn't even acknowledge him. His eyes remained fixed on mine. "Emily Carter," he continued, "your clearance has just been reactivated, effective immediately." My father's smile vanished. Rachel's bouquet slipped from her hands and hit the grass. Commander Hayes took one slow step backward, almost as if preparing for something he had hoped would never happen. Then the stranger added 8 chilling words that made even the commander go pale. "The director said only you can stop what's coming." The words hung over the reception like a storm cloud. Nobody reached for their champagne anymore. Nobody cared about the wedding cake waiting untouched beneath its silver cover. Every eye followed me as I stared at the black envelope in the stranger's hand. I didn't reach for it. My fingers remained frozen at my sides because I already knew what accepting it meant. It meant the quiet life I'd spent years building would disappear before sunset. My father scoffed, trying to recover control. "This has gone far enough," he snapped. "Who are you people?" "My daughter doesn't have any clearance. She pushes paperwork." The stranger slowly turned his head toward him. "Sir, with respect, your daughter has done things she was never permitted to discuss." My father laughed again, but this time the sound cracked in the middle. "Emily couldn't even make varsity soccer in high school." Commander Hayes finally spoke. "Some of the strongest people I've ever met have never cared about applause." His words landed harder than a shout. Rachel looked at me with tears filling her eyes. Please tell me what's happening." I wanted to. More than anything, I wanted to tell my little sister the truth I'd buried for years. But before I could answer, my phone vibrated once. A number with no caller ID. One sentence appeared on the screen. "Do not open the envelope until you are alone. Someone here cannot be trusted." My heartbeat slowed instead of racing. Fear was dangerous. Calm kept people alive. I quietly slipped the phone back into my pocket and accepted the envelope without breaking the federal seal. Around us, whispers spread through the guests like wildfire. An elderly veteran stood from his chair and studied me with narrowed eyes before slowly placing his hand over his heart. Another guest recognized the insignia on the stranger's credentials and immediately stopped asking questions. My father noticed none of it. He stormed toward me and snatched at my wrist. "Enough," he barked. "You're ruining your sister's wedding with this ridiculous act." Before his hand could tighten, Commander Hayes stepped between us with the effortless speed of someone who had survived countless combat deployments. His voice remained respectful, but every word carried unmistakable warning. "Sir, I strongly recommend you don't touch her." The reception fell silent again. My father stared at him in disbelief. "You're choosing her over your future father-in-law?" Hayes answered without hesitation. "Today I'm choosing honor." Rachel gasped softly. She had never heard her fiancé speak to anyone that way. My father stepped back, his face burning with humiliation. Then the stranger leaned slightly toward me and whispered, "The director believes there's been a leak. Someone with access has been feeding classified movements to an outside network for nearly 8 months. 3 agents are already dead." My stomach tightened. I knew exactly which operation he was talking about. I had built part of its security architecture before resigning. If it had been compromised, the consequences were unimaginable. "Why me?" I asked quietly. "Because," he replied, "you designed the only system the traitor hasn't been able to break." Before I could respond, a black luxury SUV rolled through the entrance of the country club, ignoring the wedding coordinator desperately waving it away. It stopped only yards from the reception. 2 more vehicles followed behind it in perfect formation. Several guests instinctively stepped backward. The driver exited first, scanning the crowd with practiced precision before opening the rear passenger door. Out stepped a silver-haired man in an immaculate dark suit whose face immediately changed the atmosphere. Commander Hayes straightened instinctively. The gray-suited agents did the same. Even the retired admiral rose to his feet without thinking. My father frowned. "Who is that now?" Nobody answered him. The distinguished man walked directly toward me, stopping only inches away. His expression softened for the first time all afternoon. "Emily," he said quietly, "I wish this reunion were under better circumstances." Without another word, he extended his hand. I shook it automatically. Gasps erupted throughout the reception as several guests recognized him from national television, a billionaire defense technology CEO and former deputy director whose name had appeared before Congress countless times. My father stared in disbelief. You know this man?" The executive ignored him completely. Instead, he looked into my eyes and spoke the sentence I had prayed never to hear again. "The person hunting our country has just asked for you by name." The sealed envelope in my hand suddenly felt heavier than steel, and for the first time in years, I realized my past hadn't found me by accident. It had come because the war I thought I'd left behind was only just beginning. A cold breeze swept across the waterfront, carrying away the laughter that had filled the wedding only minutes earlier. Every instinct I had spent years trying to bury came rushing back. I looked at the sealed envelope, then at the silver-haired executive standing before me. If they've asked for me, I said quietly, then they've already moved to phase 2. His expression confirmed my fear before he spoke a single word. Exactly. Around us, the guests exchanged nervous glances, unable to understand why decorated military officers, federal agents, and one of the country's most influential defense leaders were treating the woman my father had just called nobody like she was the most important person on the property. Rachel stepped beside me, refusing to let go of my hand. Emily, please stop protecting everyone else. Tell me who you really are. My eyes filled for the first time that day. I wanted you to have one normal wedding, I whispered. Just one day where you didn't have to worry about me. Before Rachel could answer, one of the agents rushed toward the executive, an earpiece pressed tightly against his ear. Sir, he said urgently, we've confirmed an unauthorized signal inside the venue. Someone here is transmitting live. Commander Hayes instantly turned, his sharp eyes scanning every guest, every waiter, every photographer. The reception that had looked like a celebration moments ago suddenly felt like hostile territory. Without raising his voice, Hayes began giving precise instructions. Lock the north entrance. Nobody leaves until we identify the source. Marines, with me. 3 active duty Marines attending the wedding immediately responded without hesitation. My father looked completely overwhelmed. Have you all lost your minds? He shouted. This is a wedding, not a battlefield. Nobody answered him. The retired admiral slowly approached me instead. His weathered face carried deep respect. Miss Carter, he said softly, I attended a classified briefing 4 years ago. They never showed us your face, only your code name. I didn't believe someone that young could have prevented what happened overseas. My father laughed bitterly. Now this is getting ridiculous. Emily isn't some war hero. The admiral turned toward him with disappointment rather than anger. Sir, because of your daughter, more than 200 American service members came home alive to their families. My father's face drained of color. Rachel covered her mouth with trembling hands. I closed my eyes for a brief second. That mission had never been about medals. It had been about bringing people home. But hearing those words spoken aloud after years of silence felt almost unbearable. Before anyone could ask another question, a loud crash echoed from the catering tent. Plates shattered across the floor. Every trained eye snapped toward the sound. One waiter dropped his serving tray, then bolted toward the parking lot. Commander Hayes moved first. Stop him, he shouted. 2 Marines sprinted after the fleeing waiter while federal agents surrounded the remaining exits. The man shoved guests aside with surprising strength, reaching a black SUV parked near the tree line. Just as he grabbed the driver's door, he stopped cold. Standing directly in his path was me. I hadn't even realized I'd moved until I saw the fear in his eyes. He recognized me instantly. You're supposed to be retired, he muttered. That was the plan, I answered. His hand slipped inside his jacket. Every weapon around the parking lot was raised in less than a second. Hayes shouted, Emily, move. But I didn't. I saw something no one else noticed, a tiny blinking device clipped beneath the man's collar. My heart sank. Don't shoot, I yelled. He's wearing a dead man trigger. Everyone froze. The waiter's lips curled into a nervous smile. Looks like they didn't exaggerate your reputation. Slowly, he pulled a small folded photograph from his pocket instead of a weapon and tossed it onto the pavement between us. The wind flipped it over. Rachel gasped. Commander Hayes stared in disbelief. My blood turned cold. The photograph showed me, taken less than 24 hours earlier outside my apartment. Standing beside me was an elderly woman smiling as she carried groceries, my neighbor, Mrs. Evelyn Brooks, the woman who had baked me cookies every Christmas since I moved into the building. Across the bottom of the photo, written in thick black marker, were 6 chilling words, "We already know who you love next." For one endless second, the entire parking lot stood frozen. My eyes never left the photograph lying on the pavement. Mrs. Evelyn Brooks smiled in the picture exactly as she always did, carrying her little paper bag of groceries, completely unaware that someone had been watching her. My chest tightened. They hadn't chosen her because she had any connection to classified operations. They had chosen her because they knew she mattered to me. Commander Hayes slowly stepped beside me without taking his eyes off the man wearing the dead man trigger. Emily, he said quietly, don't let him control this. I gave the smallest nod, but my mind was already racing through every possibility. Whoever had planned this operation knew my habits, my apartment, the people I greeted every morning, even the route I walked to work. That wasn't surveillance, it was a message. Behind me, Rachel whispered through trembling tears, "Who are these people?" I couldn't answer. My silence said enough. The waiter smiled again, almost proudly. "You always were hard to scare," he muttered. That's why they wanted me to deliver the photo personally. Federal agents tightened the perimeter while bomb technicians carefully approached, refusing to rush the man. Then his smile disappeared. But I'm only the introduction. The dead man trigger suddenly emitted a sharp electronic tone. Every trained officer instantly recognized it. One of the bomb technicians shouted, "Signal interruption. Somebody's activating it remotely." Before anyone could react, I lunged forward and grabbed the man's wrist, forcing his thumb away from the pressure switch. He struggled violently, but years of specialized training took over before conscious thought. In one fluid movement, I twisted his arm behind his back, drove him to his knees, and secured the device against the pavement. Commander Hayes immediately locked the man's other arm while agents disconnected the trigger. 7 tense seconds passed before the technician yelled, "Device secured." A collective breath escaped from everyone present. My father stood 20 feet away, unable to speak. His eyes were fixed on me as though he were seeing his own daughter for the first time. "Emily," he whispered, barely audible. "Where did you learn to do that?" I slowly stood, brushing dirt from my dress. "You never asked where I disappeared every time I missed Christmas," I replied without anger. "You only complained that I wasn't there." The words struck him harder than any accusation. Rachel's tears finally spilled over as she wrapped her arms around me. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I believed everything they said about you." I hugged her tightly. "None of this is your fault." Before the emotional moment could last, the captured operative began laughing. It wasn't nervous laughter. It was the sound of someone who believed he had already won. The silver-haired executive walked toward the prisoner, his expression colder than steel. Tell me why you're here. The man looked directly at me instead. Because she isn't the target anymore. Every muscle in my body went rigid. What does that mean? I demanded. He leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough that only those nearest could hear. While everyone was watching this wedding, another team entered the one place you believed was untouchable. My heart stopped. The executive immediately reached for his secure phone, but it rang before he could dial. He answered, listened for only 3 seconds, and the color drained from his face. Very slowly, he lowered the phone and looked straight at me. Emily, he said, struggling to keep his composure, they breached the National Strategic Intelligence Archive. Commander Hayes took one stunned step backward. The agents around us exchanged horrified looks. I knew exactly what was stored inside that vault, not money, not weapons, but the true identities of every undercover American operative working across the globe. If those files were exposed, hundreds of families would lose mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters within days. The executive swallowed hard before delivering the final blow. And according to our latest report, the vault didn't open from the outside. He looked directly into my eyes. Someone inside opened it. Using your highest level authorization. The word struck me harder than any explosion ever could. Using your highest level authorization. For a moment, even the sound of the ocean disappeared. Every face around me blurred except the executive's. That's impossible, I said, my voice calm despite the storm building inside me. My credentials were destroyed the day I resigned. The executive gave a slow shake of his head. That's what we believed. Commander Hayes immediately stepped closer, placing himself between me and the growing circle of age.